Welcome. We're excited to have you here for part of our Canvas PD series that we've been offering this year. Hopefully you can see the bit.ly on the bottom right-hand corner so you can get access to the slides. And here we are, Nicole, Carrie, and Chris, and we're part of the digital curriculum team. And we are going to be sharing with you one of the pieces from our PD series. And all of these are connected to our Canvas agreements. And the idea behind our Canvas agreements is that we want to make sure that our district has a common approach, that we are all tackling Canvas the same way so we have as much consistency for our students as possible. So you'll see here that we have an agenda, or excuse me, a table of contents for all the different sessions that we've offered so far. And these are all linked for you, and we've tried to put the video on there as soon as they get done being edited, which does take a little while. So as soon as they're done being edited, you can go to the slide and the video from that session will be linked there. And we're also linking all of these resources right into the Canvas agreements as well. So all of that, you can see that on the bottom right-hand side there. Nicole puts those videos there for us and she edits them beautifully. So we're going to go ahead and jump. We are in level 1 and we are episode 7. And so that's hot linked right there on the table of contents for you if you just want to slide down to the slide. If you just want to skip right down, I'm actually on slide 18 right now. So that's the slide that we're going to start talking about. And today's topic for level 1, episode 7 is actually lesson design. And this is huge. We've been doing a lot with lesson design. And you keep hammering it over and over. And I think that it's taking hold. And I'm going to start with one of the things that Nicole has said previously is if you wouldn't print something out on a piece of paper and hand it to your students, choosing the font and the way you're going to put the directions and all the things that go into you creating a piece of paper to hand to your students, that all the same rules apply online. And I'd even argue that perhaps even more rules apply online right now, right? You may be watching this video where we are not currently, hopefully, back in the classroom someday, but for temporarily, when students are engaging on a screen, it needs to be even that much more thoughtful and that much more engaging because they don't necessarily have you right there. It can just be a cold, kind of sterile environment. So we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the things to include in your lessons. And also then we're going to jump into an example that's maybe not spectacular, and then how it could be revamped, and just some simple things. Like it doesn't need to be hours and hours behind making each page. It can be as simple as just adding a few little things. So I talked really quickly about how it's just a kid staring at a screen, right? Like ideally they're watching your Zoom class live, but sometimes the kids are just interacting right through Canvas. They're hopping on, what is the thing I'm supposed to do today? And the more that we can make that, and this was kind of a new term for me this year, to humanize it. So the more that you can make it personal to you, engaging to the kids with a real actual human on the other side of it, not just text, the better. So last session, we taught a whole piece about lesson templates. So be watching for that video. If you weren't able to attend that session, that video should be there in the next few weeks. That's a great way to see how to utilize lesson templates, which once you build it, you can just continue to use them over and over again and be efficient with your time. So we're going to be looking here at how you can set things up so that it is just beautifully organized, right? Like the kids just know where to go, whether that's on your homepage, they know how to navigate their way through. It's predictable and the format is engaging. And I've seen, it's been fun as people have shared their Canvas courses with us. I just love it when someone else shares their screen. They project it up and you can just see a glimpse of them, whether that is the fonts they've chosen, the pictures that they've chosen to include. Some people put a video on there. It's just, your Canvas page should look different than my Canvas page, right? Just because we have different personalities. So when you look at it, there should be personality coming through, your likes, your interests, the way your favorite color, right? All of those little things, they seem silly, but it is an engaging way for people to connect. And so also the rich new, the rich content editor makes a lot of these things that we're talking about much easier. So I'm gonna run through all of these things here super quickly for you. A lot of them are very self-evident, exactly what they are, but we have them broken out into lesson design and information design, and there's lots of crossover between those two columns there. So starting on the left here, lesson design, the more visual, the better, right? If you're just staring at a huge thing just full of text, that's really not as engaging as it could be. Charts, one picture, what is the expression? A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? If you put an image up, a chart up, a graph up, where there's a lot of information that students can gather visually, that is a productive way to keep them engaged. I know that some people went a little bit Bitmoji crazy this summer, and there's good and bad in Bitmoji land, but again, it's a personal piece of you, right? That little image that I have on the right-hand side probably drew your eye, a little piece of clip art, but not just clip art, something specific to me. Maybe it's kind of funny, and maybe I'm poking fun at, being silly in there. It's engaging for students. Also GIFs, so animated GIFs where some character is doing something silly or it's dropping, or Nicole has this cute little arrow that she likes to put into our things often, and it's just simply a curly cute arrow, right? It's nothing like crazy fancy, but it directs your eye with movement, directs your eye to the place that she wants you to be looking. So again, it's more engaging than just staring at text. Videos, right? If you want to talk ad nauseum about Mount St. Helens, or you can throw on a 3-minute video about Mount St. Helens and get so much more bang for your buck. Again, the visual for students to be able to see what it is you're talking about, and then engage in the discussion or read facts about Mount St. Helens. But that initial buy-in, especially when you're staring at a computer screen. The next bullet point says, just assume, right? Ideally, we'd love students to attend all of our live instruction and hear all the directions beautifully, but your lessons should also be designed as if they didn't, right? In Sherwood today, there's a power outage, and there are a number of teachers that are not able to connect via Zoom, and we got an email from the school district where I live saying, hop into Canvas and get your instruction there. So they did not get the benefit of hearing that Zoom lesson, or the kid was off on vacation when we're back to school live, and they didn't get to hear your live lesson. When they hop into that Canvas lesson, there should be adequate direction in there that they wouldn't have needed to hear your live instruction, if that makes sense. So obviously not the whole thing regurgitated for them, but enough to get them going. The next bullet point, and I know I come from an older generation, a super old generation, where recording myself on video is just not native to me. It's not comfortable to me. Taking selfies of myself is not something that I do. So I know there's a number of teachers in my comfort level recording a video of yourself. But if a student hopped on to a page and they got to initially see a video of the teacher giving instructions, again, more humanizing and way more engaging for them. Clear instructions on navigation and submission with images. And Nicole's going to show you an example of that, where it's hard when they can't see the same screen that you're seeing, like live in the classroom. They need to know, what is the button that I'm supposed to push when I'm in a Google LTI versus they need to know what are the things, how are they supposed to navigate, how they're supposed to submit, and what those buttons look like with some screenshots that Nicole will show you. And another thing that we talked about a number of times is to hop in as a student. So we can show you how to do that as well. So make sure that you're seeing what the assignment looks like as a teacher, but also taking that student lens and popping in and saying, okay, what does this look like now that I've built it? What does it look like for my students? How are they going to be seeing the same thing? Hopping over on the right there, less text, right? I know that we like text and we like to give information, but the more you can do it in different modalities, video, right? That's a ton. Images are a ton. Let's talk, let's have a discussion. They certainly can read text, but think about how to do that. Do they read it prior to coming into the Zoom and then we have a discussion, or have some quiet time to, anyway, how you get lots of text in front of them. Bigger font. The bigger font is just like when you're presenting in front of a class, same kind of things apply. Bulleted list, again, where I can see the information pulled out. Do you have it highlighted? Do you have it in a box? the questions that I'm supposed to focus on next. So just visually, where do I go to look for it? This one was, simple layout, simplicity, right? So that if every slide is the same, every page has the same header at the top, that just they know what to look for. This one was driving me crazy at the beginning of the year because many people were trying to take Google Docs and just put them into various Canvas pages or slides, trying to fit things in. And if you look at it, that's a vertical page, and you're trying to shove a vertical page onto a horizontal screen. And it just doesn't blend beautifully. Either you have this small thumbnail of it and you're having to zoom in and see what on earth that said, but laying things out in a horizontal way, because that is better to view on the majority of screens that our students are utilizing. Being consistent with the color palette. There's a resource shared there on the right, and not all the colors are available necessarily in Canvas, but sometimes it gives you ideas for colors that go well together that you maybe wouldn't have thought of, that are complementary colors, and that you stick with that same color palette throughout the lesson or throughout the unit or whatever, just so that it's user friendly. Images, hyperlinks. I don't love when I hop into something and I see the whole web address, right? That crazy long paragraph worth of letters and numbers and whatever. If you can hyperlink it to an image, you can hyperlink it to a word, right? This is where I go for the video and I link it to the word video. Just so much better than kids seeing a whole bunch of unnecessary big long web addresses. Arrows, buttons, screenshots, and Nicole will show you that. And the last two on here are navigation on the device that they're using. And I know that can be tricky because we do have students using different devices, but there are, I would say, the vast majority of your class, right? Our K2 students have been primarily on iPads, and I know they may be using personal devices and it's different, but instructions look different if your students are using an iPad. And I know that can be tricky when you're using your laptop, but you're trying to give instructions on how they're to submit on a Chromebook or they're to submit on an iPad. So ideally, you should have one of those devices and be trying the things as a student on that device, so you know what is the keystroke on that device. How do I minimize my screen, split my screen on their device? How do I submit or get into Canvas or on their device? So
and I do want to, if I can add one thing, and Carrie is spot on. When it comes to like designing your course on your large laptop, and I say large because yours is probably larger than a student Chromebook, I think if we could definitely take a few minutes to look and see what it looks like on a mobile device, that will be the best way to make sure that what we're creating, is it too big? Is our buttons so spread out? And so if we can take a few minutes, because on your phone as a teacher, you can go ahead and load the Canvas app on your phone. And I don't know if you know this, but if you load the Canvas app on your phone or the teacher app on your phone, in Canvas, you can actually click show QR code and you can scan it with your phone and it'll take you right to your course so you can see what it looks like from that device. So I think Carrie is spot on as far as taking a few minutes. Doesn't mean every single time you make a change. It's just that if you're spending a lot of time designing and building something, it's okay to take a few minutes to look at it on a mobile device.
And I'm trying to find right now the Chromebook Simulator, that because I know many of our teachers don't have access to a Chromebook. And so there is a simulator if you're trying to get ideas for, you know, like what buttons they might have to push on their keyboard or something, that can sometimes be really helpful. And then I just wanted to see if Carrie could kind of elaborate too on a phrase that we say all the time, which is less is more. Because I think sometimes when you're accosted with this big old list and you're like, wait a minute, I thought I was a teacher and not a graphic designer. How does the graphic design aspect come into play here as we are lesson designing, but then also the less is more concept, so that it doesn't feel like these bullets are just a ton more work on the back of teachers.
Yeah, you'll take a look at one of the assignments that Nicole, it's not more complex, it's actually making it simpler, right? Like, here's this big long unit or big long activity that you want me to do. What is the heart of it, right? Like, it's get rid of the fluff, the external, like, what do I really want them to do? The primary purpose of this is that they have a meaningful discussion. Beautiful. Okay, what can I take off the plate to make sure I really devote adequate time to making sure that this is a rich discussion, and I do give it adequate time. We led a PD last week for secondary teachers, and they were so appreciative of the breakout room time. And that was telling to me as an instructor that I know we're all in a hurry to get through as much content as possible, and there's less hours in the day and more that we need to get through. But getting through it or doing it well and meaningful and taking the time and slowing down and saying, okay, we're going to focus on this and give it adequate time and space. So we're going to get rid of all the other stuff, and that's okay to get rid of some of the stuff and say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this well, right? I'm going to take the time and I'm going to make this assignment nice and simple and create a pretty template that I can use again, right? No one's saying that you have time to create templates after templates and be information designers, but you create something that you like, use it again, right? If it's how we watch a video and respond, beautiful. Simply copy that over and use it again. So you'll be appreciate the work you did up front afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. I just think, yeah, the session we did last week, we titled it Less is More, but we did not do adequate job in kind of referencing that there's a need here to kind of cut back on some of the other stuff that we're doing so that we are pretty clear and clean cut. And I think too, when you think about, because I know I've talked to some teachers that will say, you know, I have a lot of students that have ADHD where some of the gifts or too crazy of color palettes can sometimes be distracting. So, I mean, obviously take everything we're saying here with a little bit of grain of salt, but I definitely do think as a human race, we are now incredibly savvy consumers of content, and we have to kind of pay attention to the times. And I know as soon as I made a mental switch in my brain, when I went pretty much paperless, this was a while ago, and moving away from just the black and white photocopied papers to a environment full of color and images and things that could really engage my students, that's where I was like, oh my gosh, I've been living in a black and white world for so long, and now I'm ready to kind of embrace this a little bit more. So think in terms of that as well. Okay, so we'll jump into an example. And I don't think that I wanted to go too far into this with like a live demo, but I'm just going to kind of point out some of the things that you see here. And I actually think that since I took this image, I've updated it even more. So I need to remember to mention that. But in terms of like building a lesson, so this was a social emotional learning lesson built in Canvas for like a 4th or 5th grade, but I think all of the things that you're seeing here should apply. You see at the top, clear directions. You have an embedded video that I used as, I think I embedded it medium sized instead of just a thumbnail size. I wanted it nice and big. Most of the time, my directions, it might not look like it on the screen, but I move the default of my text from size 12 to usually size 18. So it's easier to see. You also see step number 3 shows step-by-step instructions. Here I've used just a quick little image that shows step 1, step 2, step 3, but I think any way that we can make an easy to-do list or task that shows the kids, here's what I need to do to complete whatever the teacher is asking me to do. This was a discussion. So it was, here, I want you to watch this video, and then you're going to respond down below. And I have also gone into in Canvas, I went into student view and pretended I was replying and doing all the things and just took a really quick screenshot. I just have a slide deck that I pop these screenshots in so that I can do arrows and circles and make it nice and clear for how I want the students to respond. And I remember working with some teachers at the beginning of the year on a different unit that was sent out as a district unit where I mentioned this, and they thought, oh my gosh, yes, that makes sense. I wouldn't have ever thought of doing that. So I think that those little reminders are super important for kids to be able to see, oh, that's what the reply button looks like, or and you maybe do that more so at the beginning of the year, and then slowly wean the kids off of that. They don't need it after, the 10th time that you've put it in. But I mean, once you build it once, and this is a trick Carrie and I will constantly do, we'll be like, oh yeah, lesson 1 from unit 2 had that, and I'm using it again here in lesson 5, I'm going to go copy and paste that over. As long as it's staying within the same content area or same course in Canvas, the copy paste feature works really well. Or you can go into the module itself and click duplicate and just correct whatever you need to. So either way will work. But that's, as Carrie keeps mentioning, the template. Go to our last episode where we talk about the use of templates and how that helps with efficiency. But I think that that's a huge piece. Additionally, the buttons, Chris and I sometimes butt heads on this. I am not a huge proponent for sending students into modules as my direct instruction. I definitely prefer to build out pages that have images and instructions and list out where things are happening instead of forcing them into the module view. So I do use a lot of buttons. I rely, I think, a little bit on the forward and back buttons that come from building within the module itself, but then I also use other buttons like a home button to direct the kids back to a page for that unit or whatever. So keeping in mind how you're moving kids through the content, I think, is always important. Now, this particular lesson that we're looking at here, I wanted to show you that I actually was inspired by something I found in the Commons. So I started searching in the Commons for something for social emotional learning, and I found this lesson in the Commons. Doesn't matter who it was made for, but it's not anyone from our own district. I was just searching social emotional learning. And like most of the time when I'm buried in the Commons, this is this kind of stuff that I see. It's 12-point font, black text on a white background, no images, and just, I don't know, there's not a lot going on there, but it gave me some ideas and concepts to follow through with. So I went in and said, okay, we're asking elementary students to potentially think about mistakes. So I dove into YouTube and tried to find something about making good, positive choices, or how to handle making a mistake. I think those were some of the terminology pieces I was looking for, and I ended up finding this video on making good choices. And I felt like choices and mistakes was something that was kind of hand in hand. And I took some of these questions and reverted it over. You'll notice that similar to the last screen, so actually it's a different lesson, isn't it? So the last screen you saw that I had step 1, step 2, that same kind of idea, and I copied and pasted that here. You see that I do have some click here to post, whatever. The directions are listed up at the top. The video is embedded. So a lot of those same components happen. So I took inspiration from the Commons, but then I took just a little bit of extra time and added some more pieces in to make it a little bit more engaging and to think about all of those other components that we talked about. Thoughts on that? Go back here. Because I think we didn't necessarily felt like we need to go into a live demo for this one. We were kind of confident this is something we've talked about quite a bit this school year.
And that big crazy list there is obviously not within one lesson, right? That's a whole menu of ideas for you to pick and pull from when designing your lessons.
It's one of those things where I hear teachers say, you say less is more, but this seems like a lot more, you know? And I guess it comes back to like engagement. If you're looking at engagement numbers and they're not very high, you're not seeing the responses from students that you need to see. I don't know how else to explain it other than to say, like, look at what they're doing in their own spaces, whether that's, you know, on Roblox, on TikTok or whatever, and you see like how savvy they are at creating things, and the consumption of those things, and then you zero in on 12-point font and a white background. Like, to me, that's your answer. Like, you're like, there's a lack there. And I know that we can go back and say, well, but this is school and they need to do it, right? Like, but I don't know. It's my own hill to die on. So if it means that we have less busy work, that we do larger projects where we focus in on, you know, socialization discussions and that sort of thing, kids are teaching each other, we're utilizing the group and the group feature on Canvas and the thread feature on Canvas, or discussion thread feature on Canvas. then, and less of the just constant assignment worksheet like things, then we might have more time in this instance to build it out. I just think too, we also should, as kind of Carrie was mentioning, avoid external URL embed in Canvas, like constant, because that's another thing that I'm seeing a lot as I dive into the comments, whether it's our own teachers or people from outside. I'll see an entire module built that's just external URL, external URL, external URL, which means it's just a slide deck. The teachers are just building slide deck after slide deck after slide deck, and that doesn't work either. So I don't know. And then the other thing too is to think in terms of longevity. If I started building something this year and, I took a little bit of time, maybe not a whole lot, but a little bit of time this year, and then next year the same unit comes back around and I can go back in and jazz it up a little bit more. I mean, you don't have to do it all now, but a little bit at a time this year and a little bit more of zhuzhing next year will also add to it too.
And
So.
it's always that working smarter, not harder. Like once you set up a how to view a video and you have clear directions and you have where the video goes and you have the response, like beautiful, copy that and put a different video in it, but that instruction is already there. Like you're going on a field trip, you likely grab the old field trip permission slip and you revamp it with the new details. Same idea, don't reinvent the wheel, but grab a wheel you already made and shine it up.
Well, I think that's too why I kind of think about the lesson template one that we had last week, where we were really kind of diving into the concept that, pages set up in a different way or assignments set up in a different way, where students are reading something, exploring something, watching a video, and you have a template set up for each of those different scenarios, then it's working smarter, not harder, because you've built that and then you just plug in the content as needed. So I think that that's helpful too, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it there when thinking about variation too. I'm slightly concerned as I see some of the content coming through that it's just page after page after page of the exact same style of content, whether that's assignment, or slide deck, formative. I just think, we have to be paying attention to that robotic, like there's a fine line between building routine and then boring the what out of our students so that they disengage. So at some point that kind of backwards design, universal design, both of those things should come into play. Universal design hits on a little bit what Pat's talking about, that accessibility piece, but that backwards design where you're really being critical as a teacher of the curriculum you're building and thinking through, okay, I'm going to teach them this part and then build on that skill. And oh my gosh, I'm doing a ton of assignments. Maybe we should throw a discussion thread in there, and just being cognizant of that stuff, I think is important.
I think it's been said 100 times, it potentially could be just not just good teaching practices, but like intentionally good teaching practices, right? Because